need you to understand something before I start. I didn't imagine it, I didn't dream it, and I didn't tell anyone for a long time, because saying it out loud made it feel permanent, real in a way I wasn't ready for. But it happened. It stayed outside my window for hours, breathing, slow, heavy, wet almost, like something that had lungs too big for its body. And then, without warning, it stopped, not faded, not moved away, just stopped. And that silence, that sudden, impossible silence, was worse than anything that came before it. Because that's when I realized the sound hadn't disappeared. It had just changed places. I wasn't always like this, jumping at small noises, checking locks twice, listening too hard to nothing. Back then it was just a cabin, just a cheap place I rented for a few weeks because I needed distance. That's the simple version I told people. Needed a break, needed quiet. The truth is heavier. I left because things were already starting to feel wrong. Not in a dramatic way, subtle, like when a room you've lived in for years suddenly feels unfamiliar, even though nothing has moved. I thought isolation would reset me, clear my head. That's what I told myself as I drove deeper into the forest, the road narrowing until it was more dirt than gravel, trees pressing in like they were trying to reclaim it. The cabin was smaller than the pictures suggested. They always are. One bedroom, a cramped living area, a bathroom that smelled faintly of rust and damp wood. There was a single window in the bedroom facing the tree line. That detail matters more than I realized at the time. I remember standing there the first evening, looking out at the forest as the light faded. It wasn't dramatic, no sudden dread. Just a quiet observation. The trees stood closer than they should have. Not physically, maybe, but it felt like they were leaning in. The first night was uneventful. That's important, too. If something had happened immediately, I might have left, but nothing did. I made food, listened to music, even laughed at something stupid on my phone. There was a moment, I remember it clearly, where I thought, this was a good idea. That thought didn't last long. The second night, I noticed the silence. Not the absence of noise, but the quality of it. Forests aren't quiet. Even at night, there's always something. Wind, insects, distant movement. But around midnight, everything dropped off. Not gradually, all at once. Like a switch had been flipped. I remember pausing mid-step, one hand on the kitchen counter, waiting for the sound to come back. It didn't. I told myself it was normal, that animals go still sometimes, that I was overthinking it. That became a pattern. I went to bed anyway. The mattress creaked under me, the kind of sound that echoes in small spaces. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to that unnatural quiet, pressing in from all sides. And then, after maybe 20 minutes, I heard it. Not outside, not yet. Inside. A soft shift, like weight settling. I sat up immediately, heart already racing before my mind caught up. I listened. Nothing. Just my own breathing, too loud, too fast. I got up, checked every room. Nothing out of place. Doors locked, windows shut. I even opened the closet, half expecting, no, half dreading, something to be there. It wasn't. I laughed then, a short, dry sound that didn't convince even me. That was the first time I felt it. Not fear exactly. Something quieter, more patient. The third night is when it started for real. I woke up without knowing why. No noise, no dream that I could remember. Just that sudden awareness, like something had tapped me from the inside. The room was dark except for a faint gray light leaking through the window. I lay still, listening. At first, there was nothing. Then slowly, it came into focus. Breathing. Outside the window. It was faint at first, almost indistinguishable from the wind. But there was no wind. The air had that thick, unmoving quality I'd noticed earlier. The sound grew clearer the longer I listened. Inhale, deep, controlled. Exhale, slightly wet, like air moving through something dense. It wasn't rhythmic in a human way. There were pauses, small variations. It felt deliberate. I told myself it was an animal, a deer maybe, something large enough to make that sound. But deer don't breathe like that. Not that close, not for that long. I stayed in bed, frozen, trying to map the sound in my head. It was right outside the window, close enough that I could almost feel it through the wall. At some point I realized I was holding my own breath to hear it better. That's when it changed. The inhale came deeper than before, longer, as if it was pulling in more air than it needed. And then, for a second, just a second, it sounded like it caught, like something in its throat shifted. A low, almost inaudible rasp layered beneath the breath. Not loud, but wrong. Completely wrong. I didn't go to the window. I want to be clear about that. People always ask that. Why didn't you look? Because some part of me already knew that seeing it would make everything worse. That as long as it was just a sound, I could still pretend, still rationalize. The breathing went on for hours. I checked my phone at one point, 2:17 a.m., then again later, 3:03, 3:48. It never moved away, never circled, just stayed there, in the same spot, breathing. Occasionally that rasp would slip in, subtle but unmistakable, like a reminder. Around 4:30 I started to notice something else. The pauses between breaths were getting longer. Not dramatically, just enough to feel off. Like it was testing something, or waiting. I remember whispering, "Go away." I didn't even realize I'd said it until the word left my mouth. The sound felt too loud in the room, like I'd broken some rule. The breathing stopped for a moment. Just one beat. Then it resumed, slightly closer. I didn't sleep after that. When morning came, the forest sounds returned like nothing had happened. Birds, insects, the faint rustle of leaves. Normal. I waited another hour before I got out of bed. When I finally did, I approached the window slowly, every step deliberate. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that there would be nothing there. There wasn't. Not exactly. But the ground beneath the window looked disturbed. The soil was packed down, darker than the surrounding area, as if something heavy had been standing there for a long time. No footprints. That's what I noticed next. No clear shape, just pressure, weight. I should have left that day, packed my things, driven back, told myself it was a bad idea from the start. But I didn't, because by then, curiosity had started to mix with the fear. And something else, something harder to admit. I wanted to hear it again. The fourth night came faster than it should have. The hours in between felt stretched, like time wasn't moving at a normal pace. I tried to keep myself busy. Went for a walk, though I didn't go far. The trees felt different now. Not just close, but aware. I caught myself glancing over my shoulder more than once, convinced I'd see something just out of view. I never did. That almost made it worse. When night fell, I prepared, not in any meaningful way. I locked the door again, checked the window twice, turned off the lights earlier than usual, as if darkness inside would somehow match the darkness outside, as if that mattered. I lay in bed, waiting. It didn't take long. The breathing started again, almost on cue. Same place, same depth, but louder this time. Closer. There was no mistaking it now. Whatever it was right up against the wall. I could hear the subtle shift of weight between breaths, a faint scrape, like something adjusting its stance. I pressed my hand against the mattress to steady myself. My whole body felt tense, like a wire pulled too tight. The urge to look was stronger now, almost overwhelming. I turned my head slightly toward the window, eyes fixed on the dark outline of the frame. And then I saw it. Not clearly, not a full shape, just a distortion. Something blocking the faint light in a way that didn't match any natural form. It was too high. That's what stood out. The top of it reached above the window frame, taller than any animal I could think of. The breathing continued, slow and steady. I remember thinking, if it wanted to come in, it already would have. That thought didn't comfort me. At some point, I must have drifted into a half-sleep, not fully unconscious, but not fully aware either. The kind of state where time slips and thoughts blur. I don't know how long I was like that. Minutes, maybe longer. What woke me fully was the sound. A single, deliberate inhale. Right against the glass, close enough that I could hear the faint squeak of condensation shifting. My eyes snapped open. The breathing didn't follow. Silence. Complete. Absolute. It took me a few seconds to realize what was wrong. My brain was still expecting the next exhale. It didn't come. I waited. 1 second, 2, 10. Nothing. That's when the dread hit. Not a spike, a drop, like something inside me had given way. Because it hadn't left, I could feel that. The absence of sound wasn't empty. It was full, pressed up against the window, waiting. And then, from somewhere behind me, inside the room, I heard it. Exhale. I didn't move when I heard it behind me. I couldn't. My body locked in that instant, like it understood something my mind was still refusing to accept. The exhale was quieter now, more controlled, but unmistakable. Inside the room, close enough that I could feel the air shift against the back of my neck. I told myself there had to be another explanation, that I was still half dreaming, that the sound had echoed somehow, slipped through the walls, twisted by the shape of the space. But none of that held. None of it matched the certainty pressing down on me. Because I knew exactly where it was. Not across the room, not by the door. Behind me, just beyond the edge of the bed. I focused on the wall in front of me, eyes wide, unblinking. The faint gray light from the window barely reached that far, but it was enough to keep the darkness from becoming complete. Enough to stop my imagination from filling in details I didn't want to see. The silence stretched again, then another breath, closer. I felt the mattress dip, just slightly. A shift in weight so subtle I might have missed it if I hadn't been completely still. But I felt it. The fabric beneath my hand tightened. The frame gave a soft, strained creak. It was sitting down. Something inside me broke at that realization. Not panic, not yet. Something quieter. A kind of understanding that this had already gone too far. That whatever line I thought existed between outside and inside didn't matter anymore. I swallowed, my throat dry, and forced out a whisper. Please. I don't know why I said it. I don't know what I expected. The breathing stopped, for longer this time. And in that pause, I felt something else. Not movement, not touch. Attention, focused, intent. Studying me the way you study something you haven't decided what to do with yet. Then slowly, deliberately, inhale, right beside my ear. I broke. I rolled off the bed in a blind panic, hitting the floor harder than I expected, pain flaring up my shoulder. I scrambled forward, not daring to look back, every instinct screaming at me to get distance, to get out, to put anything between me and whatever was behind me. The room stayed silent. No footsteps, no sudden movement, no chase. That almost made it worse. I reached the door, fumbled with the lock, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip it. For a second, just a second, I thought it wouldn't open, that I'd be stuck there, trapped in that space with it. Then it gave. I stumbled into the main room, lungs burning, heart slamming against my ribs. I turned then. I couldn't help it. The bedroom doorway was empty, dark, still, exactly as I'd left it. No shape, no movement, nothing. I stood there for a long time, staring, waiting for something to step into view. It didn't, but I could still feel it. Not in the room, not exactly, somewhere in the cabin, and that was worse. I didn't go back into the bedroom, not that night. Not the next morning either. I stayed in the main room with every light on, sitting on the edge of the couch like I was waiting for something to explain itself. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have, each second dragging against the silence that kept settling in waves. Every few minutes, I thought I heard something shift, wood creaking, a faint pressure change. But whenever I focused, it was gone. Or maybe it had never been there. That's the problem. Once something like that happens, you stop trusting the difference between sound and expectation. I kept replaying it, the breathing outside, the pause, the silence. Then behind me, on the bed, close enough to feel. I tried to force logic into it, tried to reconstruct it into something explainable. But every version fell apart at the same point. It didn't come in. It was already inside. That thought stayed with me as the sky slowly turned gray. Morning didn't feel like relief anymore, just a different kind of exposure. Like whatever had happened wasn't tied to the dark the way I needed it to be. I didn't check the bedroom right away. I avoided even looking at the doorway, like eye contact with that space might trigger something. Instead, I moved through the cabin slowly, deliberately, testing it. The kitchen, the bathroom, the front door. Everything looked normal, nothing disturbed, nothing out of place, too normal. Eventually, I forced myself to stand in front of the bedroom door. I remember noticing my hand before I touched the handle. It was steady. That didn't feel right. I thought I'd be shaking, panicking, but I wasn't. It was like something inside me had gone quiet, in a different way. Not calm, just muted. I opened the door. The room looked exactly the same. Bed slightly unmade, curtains still. That faint gray light washing over everything. No signs of anything being there. No impressions on the mattress beyond where I had been lying. I stepped inside slowly, every sense stretched thin. Nothing. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. And then I saw it. The window. It wasn't broken, not open, but the glass. It looked wrong, subtle, easy to miss if you weren't already looking for something. A faint, smeared pattern across the surface, right at about head height. Not a handprint, not exactly. More like something had pressed close to it, breathing against it. The condensation had dried unevenly, leaving behind a distorted outline, too large, too high. And there were streaks running downward, thin, irregular lines like moisture had gathered and slipped slowly over time. I stepped closer before I could stop myself. That was a mistake. Because as I leaned in, I noticed something else. The smears weren't only on the outside, there were marks on the inside of the glass too. Fainter, but there, mirroring the ones outside, like something had been pressed against both sides at the same time. I don't remember stepping back. I just remember suddenly being near the door again, my chest tight, my thoughts starting to fracture around the edges. That wasn't possible. It didn't make sense. There was no version of events where that made sense. Unless... No. I pushed that away immediately, refused to let it form fully. I left the room again and didn't go back for the rest of the day. By afternoon, I'd convinced myself I needed to leave, that whatever curiosity had kept me there was gone, replaced by something heavier, something final. I started packing slowly, mechanically, like I was following instructions I didn't fully believe in. Clothes, charger, keys. Every small movement felt louder than it should have. At one point, I stopped, because I realized something. I hadn't heard the forest all day. No birds, no wind, nothing. That silence again. But it wasn't coming from outside anymore. It was inside the cabin, wrapped around it. I turned toward the bedroom without meaning to. The door was still open, dark inside despite the daylight. And for a second, just a second, I thought I saw something shift in there. Not movement exactly, more like the absence of light adjusting too slowly, like something large had just leaned out of view. I grabbed my keys. That was it. No more waiting, no more checking. I moved to the front door, every instinct screaming at me to leave now, before. The floor creaked behind me, slow, heavy, deliberate. Not random settling, not old wood. A step, from the hallway, from the direction of the bedroom. I froze, hands still on the door handle. Another step, closer, measured, controlled. Whatever it wasn't hiding anymore. And this time, it wasn't breathing. I didn't turn around. Every instinct I had, every stupid human impulse, was screaming at me to look, to confirm it, to give shape to the thing my mind was already building behind me. But something deeper, something colder, held me in place, because looking would make it real in a way I couldn't undo. The second step landed heavier than the first, closer. The wood beneath it let out a slow, strained creak, like it was carrying more weight than it should have. I could map it in my head without seeing it. The distance, the angle, the way it was closing the space between us, one deliberate movement at a time. No rush, no hesitation. It knew I wasn't going anywhere. My hand tightened around the door handle, but I didn't pull it open. Not yet. There was a thought forming, quiet, almost detached, that if I moved too soon, too suddenly, it would react, that whatever fragile stillness existed right now would break into something worse. So I stood there, waiting, listening. A third step, right behind me now, close enough that I could feel it, not touch, not exactly, but a pressure, like the air itself had thickened. My ears strained for the sound of breathing, for that wet, heavy rhythm that had haunted the night. Nothing. That absence hit harder than anything before, because it meant one thing. It didn't need to breathe anymore. A faint sound followed. Not a step this time, something subtler. A shift. Fabric? No. Closer to. Skin moving against itself. A low, almost imperceptible drag, like something adjusting its posture, leaning in, toward me. My vision started to blur at the edges, not from movement, but from the sheer force of holding still. My body wanted to react, fight, run, anything, but it was like I'd been pinned in place by something I couldn't see. Then, a voice, Not loud, not even clear, but there, right behind my ear. You heard me. It wasn't spoken the way people speak. The words felt assembled, like they had been learned without being understood. Each syllable slightly off, stretched in the wrong places, pressed together too tightly. I felt something inside my chest drop. Because it wasn't asking, it was confirming. My grip on the handle broke. Not by choice. My hand just gave out, fingers slipping like they'd lost strength all at once. I sucked in a breath, sharp and involuntary. Behind me, something shifted again, closer. If it moved any nearer, it would be touching me. You listened. That same broken cadence, slower this time, more deliberate, like it was trying to get it right. I shook my head without meaning to. A small movement, barely anything, but it noticed. The air changed immediately, not violently, not fast, just focus, like everything about it narrowed in on that one reaction. Another sound followed, wet, subtle, a faint click buried in it, like something in its jaw settling into place. Say it. That was different, not mimicry, instruction. My throat tightened. I couldn't force anything out. My mind scrambled for something, anything, to respond with. But all I could think about was the way it had said those words, the expectation behind them. It didn't want conversation, it wanted recognition. The sound tore out of me before I could stop it. Weak, unsteady. The moment it left my mouth, I knew that was wrong. The reaction was instant, not a movement, not a sound, a presence, closer than before, impossible even, like the space between us had collapsed without anything actually crossing it. I felt it then, not hands, not limbs, something else, a pressure against my back, broad, uneven, not pushing, just there, resting, testing. My knees almost gave out. Again, the word came sharper, less broken, learning, adapting. I squeezed my eyes shut, heart slamming so hard it hurt. Every part of me was screaming to run, to open the door, to get out. But I knew, somehow, that I wouldn't make it. Not like this. Not with it this close. It wasn't blocking me. It didn't have to. I heard you, I whispered. The words felt wrong the moment I said them. Too complete, too human. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the pressure lifted. Not fully, just enough to create space. A pause, long, stretching, processing, and then, softly, closer than before. You are inside. My eyes snapped open. That didn't make sense. None of this did, but those words, they landed wrong in a different way. Like the meaning had shifted halfway through. I started to turn. I don't know why. I knew I shouldn't. Every instinct had told me not to look, not to confirm, not to give it form. But I did anyway. Just slightly, just enough to see. The door, already open, wider than I'd left it. And the forest beyond it was gone. Not dark, not obscured. Gone. Like something had taken its place. Something that was now slowly breathing. I don't remember deciding to move. 1 second I was staring at that doorway, at the absence where the forest should have been. And the next I was stepping backward, away from it, away from everything. My heel caught on the edge of the rug, and I almost went down, but I caught myself on the wall, fingers scraping against the wood hard enough to sting. The doorway didn't change. That was the worst part. If it had shifted, flickered, done anything unnatural in a visible way. I could have told myself it was a trick of light, stress, lack of sleep, but it stayed exactly as it was, solid, open, wrong. And that breathing, it wasn't behind me anymore. It was coming from there, slow, expanding, filling the frame of the door like it had depth, like the air itself inside that opening had lungs. I forced myself to turn fully this time. The room behind me, where it should have been, was empty. No shape, no movement, nothing. That didn't make it better. It made it worse. Because now there was nowhere to assign it, no place to contain it. Outside, I whispered, though I don't know why. Maybe I was trying to correct something, reassert a rule that had already been broken. You were outside. The breathing in the doorway paused, not completely, just enough to notice. Then softly, a sound that might have been a laugh. Not human, not even close. It didn't come from a throat the way laughter should. It was thinner, split, like multiple attempts layered slightly out of sync. You opened. My stomach dropped. I hadn't. Had I? My mind scrambled backward, trying to replay the last few seconds, the position of the handle, the angle of the door. I remembered reaching for it. I remembered not pulling it. I remembered a gap, a clean missing piece of time. No, I said, louder now, shaking my head like that could force the memory back into place. No, I didn't. The breathing deepened, and the space beyond the doorway shifted. Not visibly, not in a way I could point to, but I felt it, like depth increasing, like the distance between the threshold and whatever was beyond it had stretched, or maybe collapsed. I couldn't tell which. You let me... Each word came more clearly than the last, less broken, more certain. I backed up again until I hit the kitchen counter. There was nowhere else to go without moving closer to that door. My hands fumbled blindly behind me until they found something solid, a drawer handle. I yanked it open without looking, more for something to do than any real plan. Utensils, cold metal clinking together. Useless. The breathing grew louder, not faster, just fuller, like it was filling more space than before. I heard you, I said again, louder this time, like I could anchor something with repetition. That's all. I just heard you. A pause, longer than the others. Then, yes, agreement, simple, clear, and somehow worse than anything else it had said, because it meant I wasn't wrong, and if I wasn't wrong, then this was real. My eyes drifted back to the doorway despite everything in me resisting it. The edges of it looked off now, not straight, not stable, like the frame itself couldn't fully contain what was behind it. And then I noticed something that made my chest tighten all over again. The light. There wasn't any, not outside, not inside that space, but I could still see it. Not clearly, but enough. Enough to know there was something there, something tall, too tall. Its outline didn't hold still. It shifted subtly, like it wasn't used to being seen, like it was adjusting itself in response to me noticing. I felt my breath catch, and in response, it inhaled, deep, matching me, mirroring. You listen well. The words came smoother now, almost natural, learning faster, too fast. I shook my head again, harder this time, backing sideways along the counter, trying to put distance between me and the direct line of that doorway. I'm leaving, I said, though it came out thin, unconvincing. I'm just leaving. Another pause. Then, no. Simple, final. Not loud, not aggressive, certain. My hand hit the edge of the counter and slid along it until my fingers closed around something heavier this time. I didn't look. I just grabbed it and held it tight, grounding myself in something physical. The breathing shifted again, not closer, not farther, just deeper, as if it had settled into the space, as if it had time. And that's when it said something that didn't sound like it came from mimicry at all. Something that felt like it had been waiting to say it. Stay until quiet. My throat tightened, because I understood that, not the words, the meaning. The same way I had understood everything else without needing it explained. The same way I knew. This wasn't about the night anymore. This wasn't about the window, or the breathing, or even the cabin. This was about something I had already done, something I hadn't realized mattered, something I couldn't undo. The thing in the doorway shifted again, just enough for its outline to stretch higher, wider, like it was testing the limits of the space it now occupied. And the breathing didn't stop this time. I don't know how long I stood there holding that thing in my hand. It took me a few seconds to even register what it was. A knife. Small, kitchen kind. Dull at the tip, but solid enough. I gripped it tighter than I needed to, like the weight alone could keep me anchored to something real, something human. Across the room, the doorway remained open, breathing, waiting. Stay until quiet. The words echoed in my head, not like a memory, but like they were still being said, still active, still applying. I swallowed hard and took a slow step sideways. Nothing happened. The breathing didn't change. The shape didn't move. Another step. Still nothing. A thought slipped in then. Careful. Dangerous. Maybe it doesn't want movement. Maybe it wants something else. I tightened my grip on the knife, forcing myself to think past the panic. It hadn't rushed me, hadn't attacked, even when it was close enough to touch me. It didn't. It spoke. It waited. It listened. That word again. Listened. You want me to stay, I said, my voice low, controlled, even though my chest felt like it was about to split open. Why? The breathing deepened slightly. Not louder, just fuller, like it had expanded inside the space. A pause followed, longer this time. Then, finish. My stomach dropped. That wasn't an answer. It was a continuation. Finish what? I asked, sharper now, the edge creeping in despite my effort to stay steady. Silence. Then, a shift in the doorway. Subtle, but enough. The outline stretched again, bending slightly inward, like it was leaning through something that wasn't fully open yet. And then I understood something I hadn't let myself think before. It wasn't fully here. Not all of it. Not yet. You're not inside, I said slowly, the realization forming as I spoke it. Not completely. The breathing paused, then resumed, slower, measured, not denial, not agreement, consideration. My mind raced. If I stay, I continued, forcing the thought forward, even as every part of me resisted where it might lead. You get closer. No response. But the air shifted again. That same pressure, that same sense of attention tightening around me. That was enough. I shook my head immediately. No, I'm not doing that. The word came out louder than I intended. And this time, something changed. The breathing stopped. Completely. The silence that followed was heavier than anything before. It didn't feel like absence. It felt like something had been withdrawn. Something deliberate. Punishment. The doorway darkened. Not visually, but perceptually. like my eyes couldn't fully process what was there anymore. You started. The voice came clearer than it ever had, less broken, more certain, more its own. I felt my grip on the knife tighten painfully. I didn't start anything, I snapped back, the fear twisting into something sharper, something defensive. I came here. I heard something outside. That's it. That's all. A pause, then. No. Flat, unquestioning. And then, slowly, you listened. Through. My breath caught. Through. That word hit differently. I tried to remember. The first night. The second. The moment in bed when I held my breath to hear it better. The way I focused on it. Tracked it. Let it fill my head. The way I didn't stop listening. The way I leaned into it. No, I whispered, but it didn't hold, because something in me knew. Not fully, but enough. The breathing didn't return, and that was worse, because now it wasn't reacting, it was waiting for me to. Finish, it said again, softer, closer. Not from the doorway this time, from somewhere in the room. I turned sharply toward the sound. Nothing. Empty space. But the voice had been there. Inside the cabin. Not outside. Not contained. I stumbled back a step, my mind starting to fracture under the pressure of it. Finish what? I demanded, louder now, the panic slipping through completely. What do you want from me? The answer came immediately. Too immediately, like it had been waiting for me to ask it the right way. You. The word landed heavy, final, and for the first time I understood the scale of it. Not physical, not simple. It didn't want to kill me. It didn't want to chase me. It wanted something else, something I didn't have a word for yet, but I felt it. The same way I had felt everything else. A step sounded behind me again, slow, deliberate. I turned. Nothing. Another step, to my left this time, then another, to my right. It wasn't moving in space, it was moving in position, choosing where it existed. And then, right in front of me, the air bent, just slightly. Enough to distort the edge of the counter behind it, enough to suggest shape without giving it fully. Tall, wrong, watching. Finish, it said again, and this time I realized something I should have understood much earlier. This wasn't a command. It was a process, something already in motion, something I had already begun. My hand loosened slightly around the knife without me meaning to, and the moment it did, the breathing came back, right in front of me, closer than it had ever been before. Something in me gave in before I realized it was happening, not fully, not willingly, but enough. My grip on the knife loosened, just a fraction, and that was all it needed. The air in front of me thickened, folding inward like something massive was pressing through a space too small to contain it. The distortion sharpened, edges forming where there should have been none. A suggestion of height, of shoulders, of something that didn't belong in any shape I understood. And the breathing, God, the breathing, was everywhere now. Not just in front of me, inside my chest, matching me, forcing me to match it. Inhale. I tried to resist. I really did. I held my breath, clenching every muscle like I could break the rhythm. But my body betrayed me. It dragged in air anyway, deep and uneven. Exhale. It followed, closer. Finish. The word wasn't spoken this time. It was felt, like something pressing against the inside of my skull, nudging, guiding, aligning me with something I couldn't see but was already part of. My thoughts started slipping then. Not disappearing, worse. They stretched, repeated, looped back on themselves. The first night, the silence, the moment I held my breath to hear it better, the way I leaned into it, the way I wanted to understand it. That was it. That was the beginning. Not the window, not the sound. Me. I was the opening. No, I said, but the word came out hollow, like it didn't belong to me anymore. The shape in front of me sharpened again. Not visually, my eyes still couldn't fully process it, but my mind could. It filled in what reality refused to show. Tall, long-limbed, a head that sat too high, angled slightly downward like it was studying me, watching me understand. You are open. The voice was clear now, not broken, not learning, complete. And that was when it stepped fully into me, not through my body, through something else, through the part of me that had listened, the part that had focused, the part that had let it in. I dropped the knife. I don't remember deciding to. My fingers just stopped holding on to it like they weren't mine anymore. It hit the floor with a dull, distant sound that didn't feel connected to anything. Because I wasn't fully there anymore. The cabin tilted, not physically but perceptually. The walls stretched, pulling away, like the space itself was being hollowed out to make room for something larger. The doorway behind me didn't matter anymore. The outside didn't matter. Everything was inside now, inside me. I felt it moving, not in my body but around my awareness, sliding through memories, testing them, pressing against them like it was mapping something. My voice came out again, but it wasn't steady. What happens if I don't finish? A pause, not long, not uncertain, just enough. You already did. The word settled in like something final clicking into place. And then, everything surged. The breathing overtook mine completely. My chest expanded too far, too fast, pain shooting through my ribs as something forced the rhythm deeper, stronger, wider. My vision fractured, splitting at the edges, doubling, then merging again in ways that didn't make sense. I saw the cabin. I saw myself, standing there, small, contained, and something else standing where I had been looking, something tall enough that it had to bend slightly to fit inside the space. Its head turned slowly, not toward me, toward the version of me still standing there, watching, listening. Quiet, it said, and my thoughts stopped, not faded, stopped. Everything that made noise inside my head, fear, memory, doubt, cut cleanly, like a switch had been flipped. For the first time since it started, there was silence. Perfect, total, and in that silence, I understood what it had wanted. Not my body, not my life, my awareness, my ability to hear, to focus, to open. It didn't come from outside. It came through attention, through listening, and I had given it exactly what it needed. The cabin snapped back into place around me. The distortion vanished. The doorway showed the forest again, normal, still, empty. I was on the floor. I don't remember falling. My head ached, a deep, dull pressure that pulsed behind my eyes. My chest burned like I'd been running for hours. For a moment I thought it was over, that it had left, that whatever had happened had passed. Then I breathed, and something breathed with me, perfectly, in sync, not outside, not separate, with me. I stayed there for a long time, not moving, not thinking too hard, afraid that if I did, I'd feel it more clearly. But it didn't fade. It didn't weaken. It stayed, quiet, waiting. I left the cabin that day. I don't remember packing everything. I don't remember the drive back. Whole pieces of time are just gone, like they were never recorded in the first place. But I made it out. Back to roads, to people, to noise. That should have helped. It didn't, because the silence came with me, not the absence of sound, something else, a layer beneath everything. And sometimes, only sometimes, if I stop and really listen, I can feel it shift, just slightly, like it's leaning closer, not to the world, to me, waiting for me to do it again, to focus, to listen the way I did that first night. I don't let myself. I keep noise around me now, always. Music, TV, anything to keep my attention from settling too deeply into one place. Because I know what happens when it does. I know what's on the other side of that silence. And sometimes, late at night, when everything slips just a little too quiet, I still catch it. Not outside, not behind me, but layered into my own breath. A second rhythm, slightly deeper, slightly off, patient, learning. And every now and then, it lets me hear it clearly again, just once, just enough to remind me that it never left, and that the next time the silence comes, it won't need to ask me to finish.